That's about it.
Wasn't it like that in the movie too? That you kept pushing them down.
We have the spinning, cutting things.
Oh yeah, the hands. I
Yeah,
forgot all
that's-
about
those. As I mentioned earlier, speech. It's been one of the things that Owen brought up really early and talked to Scott and I about was that you want to talk about your original, even just for having in general, and an inspiration.
I wanted speech. I think it wasn't, I don't know if it wasn't ready or we decided not to spend the money on it, but the inspiration in my head was the end of Alien. And I always loved Mother, who just very calmly said, there are now 3 minutes to self-destruct. She was just so calm about it, and I loved that countdown. And I really wanted to do that when you set the reactor off. You know, this very calm woman's voice saying, you should get out now.
Right. So the plan is to get Mother in here. It's very interesting, though, because as we started to do this, as I mentioned earlier, Scott's friend, Bill Gardner, has helped us with LPC encoding, and he has a great tool and a very deep experience in that. But when we try to encode female voices that sound like Mother, on the TMS 5220, they come out sounding quite crappy.
Weird. They're weird.
And Scott's always example, which is a great one. You want to tell it? I don't have to paraphrase you, I suppose.
In reference, sorry.
For the speech and Obi-Wan
Oh yeah,
versus
so
like
Obi-Wan, yeah, so like, we talking, it says use the Force, Luke. It's a very low, deep voice, which that speech encoder does a really good job at. It actually sounds really good. But if we were to get Princess Leia to say something like that, it would sound terrible because her voice is much higher. And it just doesn't do as good a job.
Even Luke's voice.
Yeah, Luke
gets
squawky. It gets squawky, and that's not what Mother sounds like, really.
So in the FPGA, we're going to cheat because I have all the reference waveforms. So I just loaded the FPGA and play Mother directly, so it'll sound fine on the FPGA. But with the TI chip, it's going to sound a little bit more buzzy.
Yeah. So right now, out there on the game, there is some speech in there. My voice is in there. Don't think my daughter's voice is in there anymore. There's a bunch of gauntlet speech in there for the countdown, temporarily, etc., just to prove it out. And so you can hear some really, we haven't spent a lot of time on it, so it doesn't sound that great yet. But it is speech, theoretically. So it's a proof of concept still. But that's been a whole other interesting sidebar to this and learning about LPC encoding and compression. So with that, as I mentioned, we're about 90% complete, I would say. We're play testing. We're really trying to internally weigh out some things. There are 4 hidden levels. If you play the game out there, they're at the very end past level 21 and they're marked as XX. There's 4 of them. And so you can play them right away now and there as they sit. All these mazes are probably going to change somewhat. We're still trying to figure out how to weave those into the story plot, whether they come in after the final space station.
It's the left in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, exactly. So we're still figuring out that kind of stuff. All the content is there. We're going to throw in a thing called a key pouch, most likely, which lets you carry keys around between levels. That'll let you, and again, these are all features that then, if you design your own levels, you can use these within the rules of the game, the constraints of the game. So,
15 minutes.
And then, yep, so that's sort of where we sit with everything out there. The game outside is pretty playable. We were up till 2 a.m. last night squashing bugs, and like Brian said, burning EPROMs.
There are a few bugs in it, so
Yep.
keep that in mind.
We took out some annoying things that were bugs, and now they're less annoying.
Yes.
Things like that. But either way, so I wanted to now give you guys a good wrap up of like how you can, we talked a little bit about a lot of stuff here and how you can get involved in this. Obviously John's game is out there, as I talked about. Those books that I have passed around here, we'll put one of those out by the game for reference, etc. As soon as CAX is over and I get back to Colorado, I'll take those ROMs and put them up on the mhedit.ascii.org site. They'll be on GitHub eventually as patch files. The way that I have to distribute this, because none of us actually own copyright to Major Havoc in any way. Atari does, which is currently owned by a bunch of lawyers, which is a bad thing. We have to basically distribute ROMs by distributing patch files. So you have to have a copy of the ROMs, because you're owners, of course, of those ROMs. And then you can patch those ROMs to be Major Havoc, the promised end.
So I'm gonna make that a little more clear. We can't give you the main ROMs.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean you can't get it.
Yeah. So that's the process, though. I'm sure that the ROMs will be out there in a handy zip file somewhere, though, as you can imagine.
ROMs.com.
As I mentioned earlier, with the editor, every HB MAME now supports the Major Havoc Promised End driver. It got split out of MAME. It's in Homebrew MAME is HB MAME, if you're not familiar with that. It has one-offs, ROM hacks, etc. I'm not quite sure why they split. Does anybody know?
It wasn't preservation.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Oh, it wasn't?
It wasn't.
Oh, all right.
So, but it's been great. The driver works fine. So I'll get those ROMs out there. The level editor is open source. If you like to code, we're happy to have you help with things. The level editor is something that is a launching point for Brian and potentially me even to just make a general level editor for arcade games in the future through a driver type interface, etc.
Framework type thing.
Yep, he really wants to make a level editor for Super Sprint. I really want to make a level editor for Zybots. And so, but we'll make everything open source. So if anybody codes, come on over. You can code.
We accept pull requests.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. What else is up there? So again, we are tracking everything on this project is on GitHub. We're tracking our issues. Since Dave is designing levels, he's usually the one submitting bugs. Myself, Brian, and Dave are submitting most of the bugs, and we're using the issue tracker on GitHub. So if you download the editor or playing this, or download the ROMs, find a bug, check out the issue list, you can submit them. We'll take them in and go through the release cycle. I'm trying to release ROMs every couple weeks, probably a month publicly is what I'll do when we get major milestones, etc. And they'll be sitting out there.
So we want to talk about this?
Yeah, let's talk about the FPGA because we have a little bit of time left. So that's how you can get involved in this, etc. And sort of help along and follow along. Just
So on that note,
find us
what if you
online.
don't want to do it on me?
Right. So there's two ways to do it. There's details on the website about the first one is if you have a board. You do have to modify it. It's not that hard. John is still here? No. Oh, there he is. He moved. How long did it take you to convert your board, do you think?
To do which part of it?
Speech. So you did speech and the promised end upgrade.
Yeah, I did it wrong first, not that long, I just followed your instructions for, letter to letter.
What do I see, about 8 wires on here?
Half an hour maybe?
Yeah.
Even
It's
that?
not too
I
bad.
mean, you have to have the right tools, I'll say that, I mean, your board work, it's, you have to have those, desoldering guns, major thing to have, you don't have that. And then the speech took half an hour maybe, again, it's just had the instructions there for you to follow. And of course you need the chip and a couple of extra, a couple of caps, with the caps, no resistors, voltage regulator, right? It's all listed there.
Yeah.
It looks like, no, what, 9 wires.
Yeah. It's not too bad.
A few jumpers,
jumpers,
install, and then solder-wise, maybe medium difficulty maybe, depending how your solder skills are.
And if you convert your board, it's literally just adding sockets with an extra address line for the most part. So if you want to put it back, you can just take that all off. You're not cutting any traces that will destroy anything, for the most part. Or FPGA is the other option. And Scott, I'll let Scott talk a little bit more about that. He sent me that one. It's really nice because I can drag my ROMs onto the SD card on my PC, plug it into that, turn on my game, and there it is. I'm running. It's nice.
Yeah, so I started doing, actually Major Havoc was the game I really wanted to do. I'd done Tempest, but I thought I would do a board for Major Havoc. Then I realized, well, that was really kind of not the best idea because, if you wanted to do Major Havoc, you were going to need